Lesson 7, the difference between mind and thought and their link with the body. After having lessons about the soul and the spirit and knowing the differences between them, this knowledge that we have God is based upon a scientific logical investigation and simple practical facts which happen around us. Let us speak in details about the mind, but before that we should differentiate between the mind and the thought. Therefore, we must know the difference between mind and thought. All mankind do not differentiate between them. They sometimes say thought and on other times mind, without distinguishing what the mind is and what the thought is. The mind is a spiritual quality that becomes attached to the spirit. When the spirit acquires, assimilates, and absorbs a certain fact, this fact becomes linked to it, so the spirit is distinguished and characterized by this, which becomes the mind. The spiritual concepts are what this mind assimilates. The spirit is like a mirror. When it heads for something, something is imprinted on the spirit. The spirit is originally a blank and pure surface. When something is imprinted on it and preoccupies it, it is then called a mind. The mind is spiritual, thought is cerebral, the soul is dynamic, and the body is but a mount and a vessel for them all. When the spirit cares for something and is fully truthful in seeking for it, it directs its radiation to the brain, which acts accordingly, and an imprint is created. This imprint on the spirit is called the mind. The spirit has a radiation which travels like the rays of the sun, but at a far faster speed. If you are honest, true to God, and loyal to his messenger, you will access a way to eternity and also to Al-Azal, the pre-material world. The spirit reaches this state spiritually before reaching it physically, and this also is the mind. When it certainly believes in death, it penetrates through it into the hereafter, then witnesses what goes on there. Those who see by the light of their hearts and spirits, as the Prophet Muhammad did, are the companions of the prophets, the true, the martyrs, and those who have the ability to do good, and these people are good company. Man and animal have all azali required mind, that is to say, the prematurely acquired mind which Allah has imprinted on the pages of all spirits before their coming to this world, to carry out their missions in perfection. God says in the noble Quran, Pharaoh said to our masters Moses and Aaron, Who then, O Moses, is the provider of you? He said, both Moses and Aaron, our provider is he who gave everything its creation, then gave guidance to it. Like Quran Fortress 20, Taha Pure, verse 49 to 50. In another of his sayings, glory to his names is glorify the name of your provider, the Most High, who has created everything and then proportioned it, and who has measured then guided. The Holy Quran, Fortress 87, Allah, the Most High, glory to your Lord, in the highest, verse 1 to 3. And as for his saying in the Holy Quran, who taught with a pen, the Holy Quran, Fortress 96, Al-Alaq, the Clot, verse 4. The word pen here is in reference to writing in the Arabic language. For example, we talk about the pen of the minister, which means that when a minister writes a directive in relation to his department, this directive will become law. Therefore, when the minister writes, what he writes becomes something real in our world. The word pen reported in this noble verse refers to what Allah has implanted on the pages of the spirits, the instincts and the desires he has put there in Allah's all world, for each creature has a special nature, and each has appropriate desires. For example, let us take the suckling infant, who guides him to his mother's breast from the first moment of his entry into this life. As soon as he leaves his mother's womb, he moves his lips, and they are ready for sucking. And as soon as the duckling leaves its egg, it runs to the water and swims with wondrous skill and mastery. After the chick leaves the egg, it soon pecks the ground in search of food. Immediately after the foal comes out of its mother's abdomen, it jumps to her udder and sucks her milk, although it was previously in the womb and could not have seen the udder. Similarly, the cat predates, the bird sets up its nest in a perfect, completely arranged way, and the bee builds its hive firmly and produces honey from the flower's nectar. Who taught the infant to suckle after he came out into the world? Who taught the duckling to swim and the chick to search for food in the soil? Who guided the foal to its mother's udder after it got out? Who taught the cat to prey upon and kill insects and birds to build nests? Who guided these birds to use soft feathers and shreds of silk in their building work? Who guided the bee to imbibe the flower's nectar? It is the potency of the great Creator, the wise and the all-knowing. On the page of each spirit he imprinted what suits its way of life and what it requires, so that you find that each creature is guided innately by the instincts all implanted in its spirit. In this way, its living is established, its continuity is ensured, and its happiness is achieved without the need for it to be shown the way. These instincts which are implanted in the spirits and the desires which are written on the pages of the hearts are what show every creature how to proceed in this current existence. Had it not been for this imprint, or you could say this running, all creation would have stood perplexed without performing any task, desiring nothing and being guided to nothing. Teaching then is indeed performed with the pen, that is the teaching of all creation, and how to proceed in this life verily arises from the writing that was written on the hand of the wise, the all-knowing on each page of the spirit. Glory to him who has set the different motives in the different creatures and put these desires in place in order to incite them to proceed enjoying the pleasure of existing and living happily in this life. It is the inspired mind, that is to say, what has been imprinted on the spirit of each creature, since all is all, the world of spirits, in order to perform tasks. The animal comes and goes in this life according to the impression that is stamped on it, and it cannot change its function. The human being is the only creature who has the ability to change and modify, to make new imprints, and to perceive new things in this life. The mind of man is achieved on two levels: one, an awareness that comes from our own experience or from what we learn from other people; two, an awareness of the deeper reality that comes directly from God. The existence to which the mind can achieve the first level depends on the truthfulness and determination of the spirit in its progression towards the thing it desires. The Almighty God says, "Nay, if you knew with a sure knowledge, verily you shall see the blazing fire." The Holy Quran, Fortress 102, Ad Takathur, Revelry in World Increase, verses 5-6. I'll give you an example. A new driver of a car faces difficulties when learning how to drive, and he uses all his senses to focus on the task at hand. Finally, after he learns well, everything becomes very easy for him. Soon you will see him driving while smoking a cigarette, or absorbed in talking about important matters, but without feeling or concentrating. He stops at red traffic lights, starts at the green lights, and avoids accidents. Suppose someone has mastered how to swim. While sleeping on the bank of a river or beside a pool, he falls into the water. Before knowing where he is and what happened, you see his hands and legs moving and striking the water to raise himself to the surface of the water automatically, without knowledge or realization or consciousness. So he does not drown. All this happens even before he works the wheels of his thought or his will. This is the mind. His spirit is programmed to swim, and it applies this knowledge unconsciously. In regards to memorizing facts, a light which is stronger than the physical lights that can be seen by us, such as those of the sun, the moon, electricity, and others, is needed as the light of the Almighty God is needed. However, this depends on many things, such as whether man follows the right path, his truthfulness with his provider, and his obedience in practicing the orders of God which he has heard from his messengers. Therefore, in many of the Quranic ayat verses, we see that God tells his noble messengers to inform his obedient worshippers about his message, calling them those who become fully aware. Thus, the mind is what the spirit perceives and contains. In order for the spirit to absorb and achieve what is necessary, man should direct himself to the thing that is to be absorbed by the spirit, and his mind will be equivalent to this in his total self-direction. For example, at school, we find that the student who completely and carefully directs himself to his teacher and is interested in the lesson will comprehend what he has been taught. Meanwhile, the distracted students do not care about the details or the explanation of the teacher. So the mind is not fully utilized without profound contemplative thinking. This is reported in many ayah verses of the Holy Quran, where the phrase "those who think" is always followed by the phrase "those who become fully aware." God says, "And it is he who provided the earth and set thereon mountains standing firm as anchors and flowing rivers, and fruit of every type he made in pairs 2 and 2. He caused the night to veil the day. Behold, verily in these things there are signs for those who think. And in the earth are tracts diverse though neighboring and gardens of vines and plants and palm trees, growing out similar and dissimilar, watered with the same water. Yet some of them we make more excellent than others, preferable to eat. Behold, verily in these things there are signs for those who become fully aware of mind." The Holy Quran, Fortress 13, Ar-Rad, Thunder, verse 3-4. In another fortress, God says, "With it he produces for you plants, olives, date palms, grapes, and every type of fruit. Verily this is a sign for those who think. He has made subject to you the night and the day, the sun and the moon, and the stars are in his subjection by his command. Verily in these are signs for men who become fully aware mind." The Holy Quran, Fortress 16, An-Nal, the Bees, verse 11-12. From the above, we conclude that mind cannot be fully utilized without profound thinking. The Almighty God does not mention the mind and the thought in vain. There is a difference between them, as we have previously clarified. On other examples, if the shuttle of a loom is void of thread, it does not weave cloth, and if it has thread, it will weave silk and woolen clothes embroidered with beautiful colors. If the printing machine is loaded with ink, the paper will enter into it blank and come out with news, pictures, and stories. If the machine has no ink, the paper will enter it blank and come out blank. Similarly, the gathering of the thought with the spirit, of the spirit's fear of death and of its horrible consequences, produces the mind and the process of spiritual witnessing. Then the spirit tumbles with the witnessing, though through the means of thought with complete use, which allows the heart's insights to open. The Holy Quran speaks about the presence of the mind and spirit, and God says, "What have they not journeyed in the land, so that they have hearts to ponder, mind to fully realize." The Holy Quran, Fortress 22, Al-Hajj, the Pilgrimage, verse 46. This verse shows that the mind is in the heart. the heart of the spirit. It is not in the head, which contains the mechanism of thinking in the brain. What is the thought? The word thought is al-fakir. In Arabic and in idiomatic language, al-fakir could be a separative fakak and ra'ah, which means disassemble, and see. That is to say, when things seen with the eye, heard with the ear, perceived by the senses come to the mechanism of the brain, it starts the process of disuniting assembly, analysis, and inference. This happens when the person is true to his endeavor to achieve something. The light of the spirit goes up to the brain, and then the spirit sees what it needs. God the Almighty distinguished man from his other creatures with thought, and as noted in the holy saying or hadith, an hour of thinking about the nature of the universe is better than 70 years of worshipping. The center of thought is in the brain, and by means of this thought, man can disassemble, analyze, and perceive. It is the only vessel for man's escape and salvation from the claws of love for this low world and its fatal flaws. Through thought, man can rise, elevate, and tower up to the highest rank, and if he neglects thinking, he will remain blind and incapable of seeing anything except the reflection of things, so that he becomes less than animal in rank. By means of this power of thought, man can guide himself and protect himself from forbidden desires. He experiences elevation and finds bliss and joy in drawing near to his provider, and so he flies upward. All of the modern inventions, industries, and technology that we see nowadays are brought about through the means of thought and truthfulness. One will be in this situation if they have not deviated and have maintained true determination in their thinking concerning worldly affairs. Thinking and truthfulness in the field of real life and eternal happiness can only be achieved by searching for the Almighty God, who is the source of life. Our example is the group of companions of the noble prophet Muhammad, as well as the companions of the other messengers at the time that they were truthfully searching for Almighty God. They recognized him and fully witnessed his bright and delightful light. They spread knowledge, happiness, mercy, sympathy, and humanity all over the world. Men became brothers, beloved and true friends of one another. Our example of those who use their thinking for this lower world with its ends and lust is what we hear and see about some European and Oriental humanist pretenders. Out of his justice and compassion, God gave this thinking power to every human being without discrimination. The mind is realized through truthfulness and determination. If man is truthful in doing something, the light of the spirit flows up to the brain. The wheels of thought rotate and production begins. According to the body, which consists of flesh, nerves, bones, and blood, being the garment of the spirit, its vessel, and its means for achieving its needs, the man's aims and tendencies, deviations, or virtues, and high good deeds of the body that will utter words against the spirit on the day of resurrection, and will be as a witness to its choices and the deeds performed by means of it. The Almighty says, At length, when they reach it, the fire, their hearing, their sight, and their skins will bear witness against them as to all their deeds. The Holy Quran, Fortress 41, Fusilat, explained, verse 20. So concerning man, body will bear witness against him. This is an evidence that the spirit will be separated from the body, and it will be responsible for all its deeds. It will enter either paradise or enter fire. However, the body is just utilized, and it is a servant for the spirit like any other creation.